Hello and welcome to Vantage This Week, a show where we recap the highlights of the week gone by. After the high-stakes Alaska summit, attention turned to the Oval Office earlier this week. US President Donald Trump met European leaders. The goal was to chart a path forward on Ukraine, but it ended with no deal. What were the key takeaways? We will tell you that. Amid the Trump chaos, India has launched a diplomatic reset. Foreign Minister Jaishankar visited Moscow this week, right after New Delhi hosted the Chinese Foreign Minister. Wang Yi visited India after a gap of 3 years. What do these visits mean? And what were the big highlights? We'll discuss all of this. Also tell you why 95% of generative AI pilot projects are failing, 95% of them. Is this the AI boom or the AI bubble? All this and more lined up. Let's get started.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
It was quite the Friday for Volodymyr Zelensky. The Ukrainian president was sitting by the phone waiting for just about any update. After all, thousands of kilometers away, his country's future was being decided. On Friday night, Donald Trump met Russian President Vladimir Putin. The meeting was in Alaska, a summit to end the war in Ukraine. It did not end with an immediate ceasefire, but a flurry of diplomacy followed. Trump dialed Zelensky, he called the NATO leaders. There were intense discussions. And now the Ukrainian president has landed in Washington, D.C. In about an hour from now, he will meet Donald Trump. Of course, this won't be easy for him. The last time he was here, things spiraled. Zelensky met Donald Trump at the Oval Office. It turned into a shouting match. Trump called him reckless. He accused Zelensky of gambling with World War III. The meeting had to be cut short and Zelensky walked out in haste. It looked like Washington-Kiev ties needed some desperate CPR.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting?
And yet here he is again. Zelensky will step into the White House again for another round with Donald Trump. But this time he's not going alone. With Zelensky is a parade of European leaders. They will all attend the meeting with him because this one is too important to fail. A lot hinges on this meeting. The future of Ukraine, the future of Europe, and what the post-war continent will look like. So let's break it down for you tonight. First of all, who is coming with Zelensky? Like I said, an entire entourage of European leaders. There's UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Finnish President Alexander Stubb, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and EU President Ursula von der Leyen.
Ultimately, our desire tomorrow is to present a united front between Europeans and Ukrainians at this moment of conflict resolution, reaffirming who is on the side of peace, who is on the side of international law. But above all, how can we collectively ensure that the international order is respected and that our collective security is protected?
We've got to make sure there is peace, that it is lasting peace, and that it is fair and that it is just. And that's why I'm travelling to Washington with other European leaders to discuss this face-to-face with President Trump and President Zelensky, because it's in everyone's interests, it's in the UK's interests that we get this right.
This is the first of its kind meeting, the first time such a big EU delegation is heading to Washington on such short notice. They all want to project unity, maybe to prevent another Oval Office ambush. So EU leaders are there as guardrails, not battering rams. They cannot directly confront Trump, but their very presence shows how much is at stake. However, the White House has bigger things to worry about at the moment, like is Zelensky going to wear a suit? Last time this was a point of contention, so this time the Trump administration is already clearing the air. They want him to wear a suit and tie to this meeting. But the Ukrainian president obviously has different priorities. For Zelensky, the starting line is simple: stop the nightly missile barrages. Just yesterday, Russian strikes killed 10 people in Ukraine. So for Kiev, priority number one is a ceasefire. And Europe agrees with this. But again, Trump is not on board. He has gone cold on the ceasefire first idea. Instead, he is talking about a permanent peace deal, one that skips the pause button altogether. And for Kiev, this is a nightmare scenario. How do you negotiate when bombs are literally falling? Which brings us to what Ukraine wants. On paper, Ukraine's ideal peace deal is crystal clear. Full restoration of all occupied land, that's Crimea, Donbass, Zaporizhia, Kherson, and all others. But the ground reality may not allow this. Remember, this is a war that has gone on for more than 3 years. The borders have changed. Kiev may have Western weapons, but it does not have the manpower. It cannot win this land back in a war. And that would mean ceding Donbass and Crimea. In fact, Trump has already hinted at it. In a post on Truth Social, he said, and I quote, "Remember how it started. No getting back Obama given Crimea and no going into NATO by Ukraine. Some things never change." So Trump is already stating the obvious, but Zelensky remains defiant, at least for now.
Since the territorial issue is so important, it should be discussed only by the leaders of Ukraine and Russia at the Trilateral, Ukraine, United States, Russia. So far, Russia gives no sign that Trilateral will happen, and if Russia refuses, then new sanctions must follow.
But that's not the only concession that Kiev will be making. Look at the second part of the post. No going into NATO by Ukraine. That's what Trump wrote. That's something that Zelensky has rallied for. Kiev joining NATO. Russia would say that's how the war began, with Ukraine's NATO ambitions and the West indulging it. But looks like he will have to forget about it. Instead, there's talk of a makeshift security guarantee package.
It means that the United States is potentially prepared to be able to give Article 5 security guarantees, but not from NATO, directly from the United States and other European countries. That is big. I mean, really big.
Does it mean boots on the ground? What does it mean, logistically?
I think part of the discussion that we're going to have on Monday throughout the day, because there's going to be breakout sessions there, is exactly the specifics of what the Ukrainians feel that they need. Because remember, as mediators, we were at this summit to advance the Ukrainian position, and we did that, and we did it successfully.
And that's why today matters so much. If Trump can get Zelensky to swallow the Donbass loss, it would set a precedent. That land can be taken by force, and the West will eventually sign off. So while the Trump-Putin meet in Alaska grabbed the headlines, the Washington meeting may decide the end game. If Ukraine holds its ground, it may emerge battered but intact. If not, it will walk out weaker than it walked in. If diplomacy was a Netflix show, then the White House on Monday was its messiest season ever. Also perhaps the most binge-worthy one. You had Donald Trump back in his favorite role of ringmaster. You had Volodymyr Zelensky all suited up by the strict stylist that is the Trump administration. And then you had the rotating cast, the band of European leaders. They were part bodyguards and part unwilling extras, trying to hold the stage together. Thankfully, no shouting match broke out this time, although that does not mean that everything went smoothly. And as always, there were viral moments. We have compiled the best ones for you. Number one, the hot mic moments. And there were quite a few of them this time. Meetings like this one are supposed to be tightly scripted. Except no one told this to Donald Trump. So he says what he wants and wherever he wants. And just ahead of the talks, Trump confided in the French president with a mic on.
think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds. Just sit down. Sit down, everybody.
Okay.
I think we'll let the press come in for a
waiting
minute.
for the off.
Please.
The he is, of course, Vladimir Putin. Trump thinks that Putin wants a deal because of Trump. Now, we're not sure that's how it works, but kudos to Macron. He tries to not respond, and it still became the soundbite of the day. Of course, this was not the only oops moment. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni had a similar one when she was talking about her own press. Listen to this.
Do you guys want to take some questions or anything? You feel like it? Huh? See. Hi, Mark. All the time.
But he loves it. He loves it. For he does it. He does it always. I never want to speak with my friends.
He's a very good.
And talking about Meloni brings us to our second viral moment, the Italian Prime Minister's many expressions, especially her dramatic eye rolls. Maybe that's what happens when you're constantly surrounded by male leaders. But Meloni cannot seem to help herself, and the cameras caught her mid-summit, rolling her eyes many times as other European leaders spoke.
But now he's the NATO Secretary General, and you're doing a trilateral after that. And
next meeting would take place without a ceasefire. Because the credibility of these efforts we are undertaking today are depending on emphasize this aspect, and would like to see a ceasefire from the next.
Take a lot of the burden. We're going to help them.
Viral moment number 3, the compliment roulette. You know that uncle at every family dinner, the one who sits at the head of the table, pulls everyone close, goes around the table, and then traps you in his stories. Well, in this case, that uncle was Donald Trump.
He's too tall for me.
He's a tall guy. Good looking.
I never want him near. I prefer Volodymyr.
Well, we're building a big a ballroom. Beautiful. Right here. If you go, it would be right through that. Right through here.
Well, we saw the ballroom at the Pentagon. That was.
And while he did compliment people, it wouldn't be a Trump summit without at least one name mix-up. That's our viral moment number 4. This time, the unlucky victim was the Finnish president. His name is Alexander Stubb. Trump first announced his name. Then he started scanning the room like someone calling roll in a classroom. And all the while, Stubb was right in front of him.
President Stubb of Finland, and he's somebody that, where are we here? Where?
I'm right here.
Oh, you look better than I've ever seen you look.
Viral moment number 5 was the family photo. Summits always end with a group photo. It is called the family photo. This one looked less like global unity and more like bad aesthetics. Friedrich Merz towered at 6 feet 6 inches. Giorgia Meloni was a little over 5 feet. Trump, for once, was not the tallest man in the room, and Macron and the lineup resembled a roller coaster.
Not a good day. That was not a great day. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Which brings us to the last one, Trump's 2028 obsession. He became president for the first time in 2017 and then again this year in 2025. And US presidents cannot be in power for more than 2 terms. So Trump cannot run again in 2028, but he really wants to. And he can't seem to let go of the temptation. So first he showed off his MAGA 2028 caps, and then he hinted at another run.
During the war, you can't have elections. So let me just say, 3.5 years from now, so you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections? Oh, that's good. I wonder what the fake
You like this idea?
Yeah.
So all in all, it was a chaotic summit, and while the dinner plates were getting cleared, Trump disappeared. Where did he go? To call Vladimir Putin. Right in the middle of the dinner, the Europeans were left a little confused. It was the diplomatic equivalent of inviting friends over for dinner and then stepping outside to talk to your ex. But that tells you all you need to know. This summit may not be remembered for the breakthroughs, but it will be remembered for the hot mics, the eye rolls, and the one call that Trump just could not wait to make. This is Diplomacy Trump style, and it's only season 1. We've spoken about Alaska, we've spoken about the peace talks, but at the center of it all is one man. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. He does that himself. I'm talking about Vladimir Putin. Because this is not just a clash of countries or armies. It's also a clash of personalities, a clash of negotiating styles. In Alaska, Putin prevailed over Trump. And tonight we'll try to understand why. What is Putin's art of the deal? For starters, I'm sure experience helps. Putin was a KGB intelligence officer for 16 years. He's been leading Russia for 26 years. That sort of experience gives you a lot of confidence. It helps you outplay your rivals. Because negotiations are like any other skill. The more you do, the better you get. And Putin has his own playbook to achieve that. It has 3 main tactics. Number 1, the delay game. Vladimir Putin is infamous for being late to meetings. He likes to keep his counterparts waiting. And I'll give you some examples. He made former German Chancellor Angela Merkel wait for 4 hours. He made Japan's Shinzo Abe wait for 3 hours. Pope Francis waited for 50 minutes and Barack Obama for 40 minutes. Some experts say this is a power move, sort of like a stamp of authority. You make your rival wait. You make them lose their nerve. You unsettle them. And finally, you make an entrance. Chances are this is not a punctuality issue because Putin is never late to press conferences or interviews. He is only late when meeting counterparts. In fact, he did that to Trump this year. In March, Putin and Trump were supposed to have a call, but Putin was busy at a press event. He delayed the call by an hour. In the end, someone had to remind him. Take a look at this.
По заявлениям Дмитрия Сергеевича Пескова, у вас разговор должен до 18 часов состояться с Дональдом Трампом. Не знаю, насколько он...
Работа такая.
Ну, не знаю, сейчас надо посмотреть, что на эту фразу скажет Трамп. Может быть, он любит интервью давать, может уже отреагировать.
Трампа не упоминал, я
Не-не-не, он узнает, что у нас дискуссия есть.
Tactic number 2. Stunts to unsettle the rival. I'll give you 2 examples. The first was in 2007. Putin was meeting German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Out of nowhere, he decided to bring his dog into the meeting. Again, this could have been planned because Merkel had a fear of dogs. She was bitten way back in 1995. So did Putin weaponize that fear? Listen to Merkel's own words. I tried to ignore the dog even though he was moving more or less right next to me. I interpreted Putin's facial expressions as meaning that he was enjoying the situation. Was this a small demonstration of power? I just thought, stay calm, concentrate on the photographers, it will pass. When it was actually over, I did not say a word to Putin about it. Here's another example, this time from 2022. Putin was hosting President Macron of France. Look at the table in between them. It's nearly 20 feet long. The same table was used with Germany's Olaf Scholz as well. The official reason was social distancing, but it looks more political than social. The table represented the gulf between the two sides, Putin calling for Ukraine's neutrality and Europe supporting Ukraine's NATO bid. We all know how that ended. Which brings us to the final tactic. Putin leaves his ego behind. The Russian president may rule as an autocrat, but in diplomacy, he indulges others. Alaska was a prime example of that. Before the summit, he praised Donald Trump. He said the US president was fighting for global peace. And at the summit, he did the same thing. He supported one of Trump's biggest claims, that if he was president, if Trump was president in 2022, Putin would not have invaded. Listen to this.
Today, we hear President Trump saying that if he were president, there would be no war. I think that would have been the case. I confirm that because President Trump and I have established a strong, practical, and trusting relationship.
In private, there was more praise. Trump later revealed it in an interview. Let me quote from what he said. Vladimir said a little while ago he had never seen anyone do so much so fast. He said, your country is as hot as a pistol. And a year ago, he thought it was dead. That's what Putin told Trump. It reveals a key element of his strategy. Putin understands how to manipulate and sway the US president. You simply praise him. And looks like it worked. Trump's heart of the deal was about overt moves, borderline childish ones, like flying B-2 bombers over the summit. But Putin was more measured. His moves focused on the person in front of him, not the cameras. As things stand, that's what worked in Alaska. The India-Russia bonhomie continues. Donald Trump wants us to disengage from Russia, so guess what New Delhi did? It criticized Trump on Russian soil. It's a masterclass on strategic autonomy. But let's start from the top. India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar is in Moscow. Today was his second day in Russia, also the moving day. Jaishankar held talks with his Russian counterpart, that's Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov. The visit itself was a message of intent from India, a sort of defiance against Donald Trump. And if that wasn't clear, Jaishankar made sure of it. He was all praise for the relationship between India and Russia. He said it's among the steadiest since World War II.
We believe that the relations between India and Russia have been among the steadiest of the major relationships in the world after the Second World War. Geopolitical convergence, leadership contacts, and popular sentiment remain its key drivers.
That's high praise from Jaishankar. He's had a busy couple of days in Moscow. He interacted with Russian think tanks. He co-chaired a bilateral commission. He spoke to the Russian business community, and today he held talks with Lavrov. It's a packed, symbolic trip. And what has it achieved so far? We'll bring you the top 5 highlights. Number 1, it's a clear message to the United States of America. After his remarks, Jaishankar took questions from the press. As expected, someone asked him about Trump's tariffs, Trump's 50% levy on India. Now, Jaishankar did not take names, but he hit back with some facts. He said he was perplexed at the logic behind the move.
We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian oil, that is China. We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian LNG. I'm not sure, but I think that is the European Union. We are not the country which has the biggest trade surge with Russia after 2022. I think there are some countries to the south. We are a country where actually the Americans said for the last few years that we should do everything to stabilize the world energy markets, including buying oil from Russia. Incidentally, we also buy oil from America, and that amount has been increasing. So, quite honestly, we are very perplexed at the logic of the argument that you had referred to.
He basically accused Trump of hypocrisy. I'm sure none of this will go down well in Washington, but maybe that's the idea, to send a strong message to Donald Trump. Next is highlight number 2. The energy partnership will continue. This is the flashpoint between Trump and India. He wants New Delhi to stop buying Russian oil, but India has refused to do that. In fact, the plan is to double down. Russia and India will jointly explore energy projects, including in the Russian Arctic.
We have good results in cooperation in the sphere of hydrocarbons and the supply of Russian oil to the Indian market. And we have a mutual interest in implementing joint projects for the extraction of energy resources, including in the Russian Federation, in the Far East, and on the Arctic Shelf.
So Trump's bullying did not work. It actually backfired. Next is highlight number 3. India raised some concerns about the trade imbalance. It is true that bilateral trade has grown from $13 billion in 2021 to $68 billion in 2024. But here's the problem with that. Most of this trade is in Indian oil imports. As a result, the deficit has widened from $6 billion to almost $59 billion now. Minister Jaishankar said this imbalance has to be addressed urgently. Unlike Trump, India is not threatening nonsensical tariffs. We are engaging with Russia. India is encouraging them to buy Indian clothes and medicines. Now, this is a two-pronged tactic. For starters, it cuts down our deficit with Russia. At the same time, it can reduce the tariff hit. Goods that cannot be sold in America can be sold in Russia. The Russian envoy welcomed this idea yesterday. Next is highlight number 4. The military partnership will also continue.
Our defense and military technical cooperation also remains robust. Russia supports India's Make in India goals, including joint production and technology transfer.
Now, this is also significant. There was a question mark over Russian arms sales to India, first because of the delays and then because of Western pressure. But today's meeting removed that question mark. India will continue its military ties with Russia, which brings us to the final highlight, a pitch for greater connectivity. Jaishankar emphasized on 2 projects. One is the International North-South Corridor, which is an alternative to the Suez Canal. Right now, Russian shipments to India travel around Europe. They sail through the Mediterranean, through the Suez, and into the Indian Ocean. But the North-South Corridor runs on sea and land. It passes through the Caucasus into Iran and then into the Arabian Sea. That's the first route. The second project is on the other coast, the Chennai-Vladivostok Corridor. This connects India's eastern coast to Russia's far east. Now, both these projects have not taken off yet, but India is keen to push them. And again, there is context. India is also working on a transport corridor with America. It's called the IMEC, the India-Middle East Economic Corridor. But who knows if IMEC will take off? There's a full-blown war in West Asia right now, plus Donald Trump has ruptured ties with India. In that context, India's push for these trade routes is quite significant. It sums up India's overall policy position. New Delhi never bets on partners. It bets on options. Donald Trump has appended US policy in 6 months. Conventional wisdom is out. Trumpian logic is in. It's most visible in his India policy. You see, India and the US were not always friends. We started off on the wrong foot. Washington supported Pakistan in the 20th century and India was closer to Moscow. Things only started improving in the 1990s when the Cold War finally ended. Successive governments tried to deepen ties between India and the US. They tried to overcome the historical roadblocks. Enter Trump 2.0. India was happy to see him return to the White House, but what did we get in return? Crippling tariffs. India faces 25% reciprocal tariffs plus another 25% for buying Russian oil. So in total, 50% tariffs. Trump officials are attacking India every day. They make it seem like it's India and not Russia that invaded Ukraine. But now there is pushback. Prominent American commentators and ex-officials are speaking out, like Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley was Trump's ambassador to the United Nations. In 2024, she also ran for president. She says Trump's policy is a strategic disaster. In fact, let me quote from what she said. India must be treated like the prized, free and democratic partner that it is, not an adversary like China. Scuttling 25 years of momentum with the only country that can serve as a counterweight to Chinese dominance in Asia would be a strategic disaster. That's what Nikki Haley has said, and she's not alone. She represents the conventional thinking in Washington, a short-term and long-term mission. In the short term, the US needs India to diversify, to shift supply chains from China. In the long term, the US needs India to contain China. Again, let me quote Nikki Haley. Simply put, China's ambitions will have to shrink as India's power grows, yet, unlike communist-controlled China, the rise of a democratic India does not threaten the free world. Then you have John Bolton. He was Trump's national security advisor in the last term. He too is cautioning the White House. This is what he said. When Trump slapped tariffs on India for buying Russian oil, but not China, which also purchases Russian oil, it may have pushed India further into the Beijing-Moscow axis. This lack of focus by the Trump administration is an unforced error. Bolton says India has been singled out. He says the tariffs are inexplicable. Another US analyst went a step ahead. That's Professor Jeffrey Sachs. He is calling these tariffs sabotage, also the stupidest tactical move in US foreign policy. Now, clearly, all of them dislike this pivot, but do they have fixes? Nikki Haley does. She is proposing two moves. One is a direct meeting between Trump and Modi. Both men have a good equation. She is betting on that chemistry to pull through. The second is devoting more diplomatic resources to India like they do with China or Israel. For instance, there is still no US ambassador in India. Joe Biden's appointee has left and Trump is yet to name his successor. Now, we partially agree with these views. Yes, the India-US relationship is very important. It should not be abandoned overnight. That seems to be the thinking in New Delhi as well. Despite Trump's attacks, New Delhi has been calm. No outbursts, no stinging rebuttals. Instead, India has responded with actions, like its outreach to China, its engagement with Russia. There's an understanding that this pivot is Trumpian. It is not a nationwide sentiment. Having said that, the likes of Nikki Haley and John Bolton must realize something. We are not here to be pawns. We are not here to contain China or to be your bulwark against the Communist Party. India's policy has been strategic autonomy. New Delhi works with every major world power, and that includes the United States of America. Do not interpret that as interest in joining the US alliance, because India is not open to that. New Delhi was never going to abandon Russia, or the BRICS, or the Global South, or even China for that matter. India looks at relationships on their merit. I don't think even pro-India American voices realize that. As for Donald Trump, he's done us a favor. His actions have brought back old memories, memories of America targeting and sanctioning India, memories of America arming Pakistan. It took 25 years to start moving on from that bad experience. But thanks to Donald Trump, we are back to square one. If it happens once, it's a mistake. If it happens every day, it's a policy. I'm talking about America's approach to India. The old policy was outreach. The new one is attack. Relentless, escalating, daily attacks. President Donald Trump started the whole thing. He put tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. And now his minions have taken over. The latest is Peter Navarro. He is Donald Trump's trade advisor, also the man behind the tariff fiasco. Yesterday, he launched an all-out attack on India. Peter Navarro says India is a laundromat for Russia, meaning India is laundering Russian oil. He also says New Delhi is perpetuating the war in Ukraine.
India doesn't appear to want to recognize its role in the bloodshed. It simply doesn't. It's cozying up to Xi Jinping is what it's doing. It's not act. And by the way, I wrote that article in the FT just to deal with the propaganda of the Indian government to make people want to feel sorry for them. Oh, they need the oil. They don't need the oil. It's a refining profiteering scheme. It's a laundromat for the Kremlin.
It's like they're allergic to facts. But let's try again. India is not the leading buyer of Russian oil. That is China. India is not the leading buyer of Russian gas. That's the European Union. India's trade with Russia has not increased 20% since January this year. That's America's trade with Russia. That has increased by 20%. And India has also not armed Ukraine. That's the West. They have done it. So if anyone is perpetuating the war, it is America. Yet Peter Navarro is brazen. He's become a habitual offender. Earlier this month, Navarro launched another attack. He said India is the Maharaja of tariffs.
You start with the fact that India is the Maharaja of tariffs. It's the highest tariffs in the world, charging on American products. And it's got high non-tariff barriers, so we can't get our products in. So we send a lot of dollars overseas to India to buy their products in an unfair trade environment. India then uses American dollars to buy Russian oil.
Then last week, he wrote an op-ed. Let me quote from what he said in it. India's dependence on Russian crude is opportunistic and deeply corrosive of the world's efforts to isolate Putin's war economy. The US is trying to isolate Putin? That's news to us. It was Donald Trump who invited Putin to American soil, after all. It was Trump who rolled out a red carpet. Yet Navarro says the world is trying to isolate Vladimir Putin. And this is a daily thing now. If it's not the trade advisor, it's the Treasury Secretary. If it's not the Treasury Secretary, it's the Commerce Secretary. The attacks are relentless and pointed. This week, the White House went a step ahead. They spoke of sanctions on India.
Look, the president has put tremendous public pressure to bring this war to a close. He's taken actions, as you've seen, sanctions on India and other actions as well. He's made himself very clear that he wants to see this war end.
The obvious question is why? It's one thing to criticize a partner. It's entirely different to go ballistic. So what could be the reason? For starters, none of these people are experts on geopolitics or experts on anything for that matter. Consider trade advisor Peter Navarro. Elon Musk called him a moron. He said Navarro was dumber than a sack of bricks. His words, not ours. But here's a more interesting point. Most of this criticism is coming from the financial advisors, not the diplomatic advisors. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been measured. Yes, he criticized India, but he also praised the relationship. And why is this interesting? Well, think about it. Why are trade advisors wading into war and diplomacy? Why is a tariff man talking about NATO's eastern flank? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Unless, of course, this is not a political move, this is a financial move. Maybe Russia is an excuse to punish India, to put more tariffs and force India to make a trade deal. Of course, this is all speculation. The fact is, you never know. Trump has multiple grievances with India. New Delhi has rejected his mediation claims with Pakistan. It has refused to concede on tariffs. It has also refused to stop buying Russian oil. Any of these reasons could have triggered Donald Trump. But here's the deal. Reasons do not matter. What matters is the policy. Yesterday, Foreign Minister Jaishankar was asked about this. He was asked specifically about Peter Navarro's comments. Listen to his response.
We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian oil. That is China. We are not the biggest purchasers of Russian LNG. I'm not sure, but I think that is the European Union. We are not the country which has the biggest trade surge with Russia after 2022. I think there are some countries to the south. We are a country where actually the Americans said for the last few years that we should do everything to stabilize the world energy markets, including buying oil from Russia. Incidentally, we also buy oil from America, and that amount has been increasing. So, quite honestly, we are very perplexed at the logic of the argument that you had referred to.
He's right. The logic is indeed perplexing. It's almost like Trump is making an example out of India. Well, he's met his match. Donald Trump mistook India's maturity for weakness, and in doing so, he's undone decades of political investments. So hectic diplomacy is on. S. Jaishankar flew to Moscow right after India hosted Wang Yi, the Chinese foreign minister. And Wang Yi visited India after a gap of 3 years. It was a 2-day trip, and by the looks of it, it was quite productive. India and China have taken a big step towards normalization. A new reset is taking shape. Both countries have announced a series of initiatives. It's a clear roadmap of where this is headed. Let's begin with the border. It is the most sensitive issue. The entire relationship depends on it, on how India and China handle the border. Both sides have agreed to form 2 new groups. The first group will focus on defining the border. Remember, there is no clearly defined border between India and China. There is no formal agreement. What exists is the line of actual control, a line that stretches more than 3,400 kilometers, and this is where most disputes arise. So the first group will tackle this issue. They will work on a framework for delimitation so that India and China can move from a line of actual control to a clearly defined boundary. That's what the first group will do. The second group has a different task. Their job is to improve border management, to make sure that the peace holds. And with the formation of these two groups, India and China are sending a message. They want to resolve the border situation and not let the differences boil over.
At the large group meeting, I am ready to work with you to build more consensus and identify the specific direction for our boundary consultations going forward and create more conditions for the improvement and further growth of our bilateral relations.
But there's more to this reset. It's also about trade, people, and connectivity. And on that front, there are significant developments to report. India and China have agreed to resume direct flights. They will finalize a new air services agreement. Both sides will make it easier to get visas, not just for diplomats, but also for tourists, students, and businesses. There is good news for pilgrims too. More Indians will be able to travel to Mount Kailash and Lake Mansarovar. This will happen from next year. Remember, these are sacred sites for Hindus. They're located in Tibet. For years, thousands of Indians have made this journey. But over the last few years, these routes were shut down, first because of the pandemic and later when border tensions escalated between India and China. This year, only 750 pilgrims were allowed to visit, but now China is ready to welcome more travelers again. The other big theme is trade. India and China have agreed to reopen border trade routes. 3 key passes will be reactivated: Lipu Lake in Uttarakhand, Shipkila in Himachal Pradesh, and Nathula in Sikkim. On top of that, both sides have pledged to facilitate investments, to remove barriers and to create new opportunities for trade. Remember, China is India's largest trading partner, but the relationship has been unequal. China exports far more to India than it imports from India. And all these steps could help in restoring balance. Later this month, Prime Minister Modi will travel to China. These breakthroughs are timed to his visit to China, and it will be a significant one. This will be his first visit to China in 7 years. He will attend the SCO summit. SCO stands for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. It's a group of Eurasian countries. China has a rotating presidency this year, and it is hosting the annual summit in the city of Tianjin. Prime Minister Modi will attend it in person. A separate bilateral with President Xi Jinping is also expected, and China has welcomed Prime Minister Modi's decision to visit.
Our bilateral relationship is facing an important opportunity of improvement and growth. The Chinese side attaches great importance to Prime Minister Modi's visit to China to attend the SCO summit at our invitation at the end of this month. We believe that the Indian side will also make your contribution to a successful summit in Tianjin.
India has reciprocated by backing China's presidency of the SCO. Next year, India will host the BRICS summit. China has promised its support for that. And this appears to be more than diplomatic courtesy. It shows an effort towards deeper engagement, to look beyond bilateral relations and to focus on multilateral cooperation. And here's another example of that. During the talks in New Delhi, both sides agreed to defend the World Trade Organization, the WTO, to support a rules-based order and to promote a multipolar world. This is a direct signal to Donald Trump, to his protectionist policies and his tariff war. India and China want developing countries to have a greater voice. This is where they find common ground. In the last few days, they've made tangible progress, from border management to resumption of flights to trade and multilateral coordination. The momentum is visible. Prime Minister Modi's visit offers both sides a chance to consolidate these gains and to carry the reset forward. Do you play online games? Do you spend money on those games? If you do, listen carefully, because this next story concerns you. The Indian government has tabled a new bill in Parliament today. In a nutshell, it bans online money games. We're talking about any online game that involves real money. Your fantasy sports leagues, your online poker, your online rummy, all of these will be banned if this bill is passed. And it's already been passed by the Lok Sabha, which is the lower house of Indian Parliament. The next stop is the Rajya Sabha, the upper house. This bill will impose a blanket ban. It does not matter if the game requires skill. It does not matter if it's purely luck. All money games will be banned. Naturally, the gaming industry is worried. They have written a letter to Home Minister Amit Shah. They're calling this move a death knell. Tonight, we'll take a deep dive into this legislation. Why was it necessary? What does it do? What will be the impact? And is this the right decision? The government has given two broad reasons for this move. One is national security. Many of these games are used to launder money. They park these funds in offshore accounts. New Delhi has also linked these games to terror financing. So that's the first and major concern. The second reason is social and economic harm. Families have plunged into debt. Teens have fallen prey to addiction, and in some cases, even suicides have been reported because Indians spend a lot of money on this. Look at the UPI payment data. From April to July, Indians spent 41,000 crores on online games. That's around $4 billion US. For perspective, this is also the kind of money that Indians spent at pharmacies for medicines. So the government says enough is enough. It is time to act. Next is question number 2. What does this bill do? Simply put, it outlaws online games that use money. If you offer such games, you will be punished. 3 years in jail, plus a fine of up to 1 crore rupees, which is around $115,000. That's the fine you face. Even promoting such games will attract punishment. Say an influencer posts about it, or a Bollywood actor appears in a gaming ad. That's 2 years in jail plus 50 lakh rupees in fine. So the government is not playing around. They are very serious about cracking down. Next is question number 3. What will be the impact? We'll focus on the skill gaming industry because no one here is defending gambling. So let's talk about skill gaming. Skill gaming in India is valued at $23 billion. The annual revenue is around $3.5 billion. It contributes around $2.4 billion in direct and indirect taxes. Not to mention it creates jobs. The skill gaming industry has 2 lakh jobs. All these numbers are thanks to the large gaming community in India. In 2020, there were 360 million Indian gamers. By 2024, that number rose to 500 million gamers. So simply put, it's a massive industry. For gaming companies, this bill is a huge setback. Yes, they can still offer games without using money, but will people still play? Because money was a big selling point. The gamers are not just looking for a challenge, they're hoping to make a big buck. Without the money, you may see the traffic plunge. So that's one problem. And there's another downside too. Users may shift to playing with offshore gaming companies, maybe through VPNs or the dark net. Which brings us to the final question. Is this the right decision? The government clearly thinks so, because they are taking a huge financial hit themselves. Remember, online gaming is a big revenue stream for the government. Reports say they could lose $4 billion in GST, and yet the government is pushing on. So they clearly feel strongly about it. But where does that leave the Indian gaming landscape? Can the industry survive this move? Well, if they want to, they will have to adapt. The same bill also prioritizes esports. Basically, your FIFA and Formula 1 games. It seeks to set up training academies and research centers for esports. It will also create standardized rules for competitions. So the Indian esports scene could thrive, plus subscriptions are not banned. You can still pay for social or educational games. Only wagers are banned. As things stand, the industry will have to reinvent, move away from prize pots and focus on other revenue streams like sponsored tournaments, advertisements, and subscriptions. We know it's not a straightforward debate. Banning something is almost always counterproductive. But in this case, the government appears convinced. So we'll have to wait and see how their plan unfolds. Artificial intelligence, or AI, it has been pitched as capitalism's new golden goose. Generative AI was supposed to do it all, write our emails, reinvent customer service, and even reshape entire economies. But as we near 2026, the goose is looking less golden It's more like a very expensive pigeon. And I'm not the one saying this. A new MIT study says the quiet part out loud. 95% of enterprise AI pilots fail. 95%. They do not deliver any meaningful revenue impact. So why is AI struggling to live up to its hype? In Silicon Valley, hype moves faster than product market fit. Take OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic, for example. They drop their shiny new models. Companies sprint to adopt them, to build their own tools around them. Every Monday is AI Monday. Meetings are cancelled, roadmaps are rewritten, budgets are reallocated, all in the service of the AI pivot. But here's the hangover. Only about 5% of pilots actually boosted revenues in a measurable way. For the rest, the dashboards looked busy, but the bottom line stayed stubbornly flat. And here's another revelation. Companies that buy specialized tools succeed more. They succeed twice as often as those trying to build their own. But try telling that to the enterprising CEO. So the result is this: thousands of internal builds that get stuck in endless beta testing. And by the time the system works, ChatGPT has already released its next version, leaving the enterprise tool obsolete even before it's deployed. Also, here's another dirty secret. Most corporate AI budgets are getting sunk into sales and marketing gimmicks. Think AI email writers, AI pitch decks, AI lead generators. But what's the real return on investment, or ROI as they call it? It's in back office automation, like cutting down grunt work, streamlining operations. That is where AI really shines. The math is clear, but the psychology is not. Because companies often just love shiny dashboards. But all of this raises a question we have often asked. Is artificial intelligence a bubble? Sam Altman recently answered this question, and it's not what you would expect. The OpenAI CEO, Sam Altman, says this is indeed a bubble. But in his words, it's a bubble built around a kernel of truth. And that phrase is important here, the kernel of truth. It is what made the dot-com boom so intoxicating. Back then, the internet was the next big thing. It was going to change everything. Billions were poured into half-baked ideas. Thousands of companies sprouted. Yes, the internet did change a lot, but it did not change everything. Pets.com was not Amazon. Webvan was not Instacart. The Nasdaq lost nearly 80% of its value between the years 2000 and 2002, but from that wreckage emerged the giants: Google, Amazon, eBay. The AI cycle looks eerily similar. Trillions are being funneled into data centers and startups. Every corporate strategy memo has AI stapled onto it, the same way .com was 2 decades ago. And yet, beneath the froth, there is a revolution. There is no doubt that we will have AI tools we cannot imagine yet. But there's also a mismatch between investor expectations and real-world adoption. And that's what creates the bubble. In fact, the biggest example is OpenAI. The company is yet to become profitable. It tells you all you need to know about the AI bubble. It is not bursting yet, but it's definitely stretching. And stretched bubbles rarely deflate politely. Why do you think Donald Trump is mediating in Ukraine? Is it because he can't stand violence, or is it because he wants a Nobel Prize? Turns out it could be an entirely different reason, a spiritual reason. Trump fears that he will end up in hell, and he thinks peace in Ukraine is his ticket to heaven. I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. Trump himself said these words. Later, the White House was asked for a clarification, and guess what? They doubled down on the path to heaven.
I think that's I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole.
I think the president was serious. I think the president wants to get to heaven, as I hope we all do in this room as well.